Welcome very much to Conversations. Pleasure to welcome to what is a very short little introductory almost to a program with two people that are guests, and it's going to be only about 20 minutes or so. But on my far left is a dear friend. On my left are two very dear friends of mine. On the far left is Nita Renfrew. She's been a guest often of Conversation. She's one of the smartest people in all of New York City. We've said that over the years. She's wearing her distinctive Guy Fawkes Mac because she is not only a great intellectual, she's also a great supporter and trying to breathe life into the Occupy movement, which is a very, very laudable thing. And so good to see you again, Guy Fawkes.
Good
Welcome
to see you.
to the program. And also on my immediate left, a very dear friend of mine who's down as an entrepreneur and also a world citizen, and that's Margaret Borges, who will be known to a lot of people in our immediate vicinity because she and I are very close friends. And Margaret, for the first time on cable television here in New York City, welcome.
Thank you very much, Harold.
Okay, well, let me ask you, Margaret, as you turn to your left and look at Guy Fawkes or Guy Fawkes there, what is your thinking as a world citizen who's an intellectual? You're both very high intellect people. What is your thought about this movement that's abroad in the world called Occupy? You've been viewing it. You're viewing one of the representatives of it to your immediate left, and also a dear friend. What do you think of as a citizen of this Occupy movement that had such a strong meaning to so many people across the world? Do you think it's over and dead and everything's back to the way it was, or do you think it's likely to reassert itself of the mass of the people against the organizing principles by which this spaceship Earth works?
It's a very prescient question in the sense that you just had in the newspaper and on the news waves the federal government going against what you call the agencies that have been responsible for okaying the largest worldwide fraud ever that mankind has ever known.
It's true, it's headlines in all
it was headlines.
Services, yeah.
And this is called the mortgage-backed securities fraud that almost destroyed nations in 2008. Banks were destroyed, countries were destroyed, debts went ballistic out the almost collapsing countries, and you had people asking what made this able to come about. And the headlines in the paper are saying somebody had to give the green light to okay the validity of bonds that were created out of securitized mortgage-backed financing, and that was your rating companies, Standard & Poor's, Moody's. These were the people that said, yes, we approve AAA rating for these new bonds. Go ahead, sell them.
Okay, so the answer is
no. Let me finish. So that was the headlines. Now this has come after 2008. How many years is that? Now we had
5. Yeah.
We had the Wall Street movement last year.
You mean the Occupy movement?
The Occupied Wall Street, peaceful. No violence except when the police came in. Now you ask yourself, why was it so short-lived?
It wasn't.
Well,
it's going fast.
You're
it's going strong.
Occupy, it still lives and everything.
It still lives.
It's going strong. It's just not covered in the media.
That's correct.
Okay, well that's good. Well, okay. We asked you. So you speak for the Occupy movement. It's still strong and going.
It's still strong and going. There are actions
of it.
every day. There are meetings every day, and the media does not cover any of it. And it's similar to. I mean, if you look at the Sandy storm, you know, you look at the media and you see things like that. People's, Con Ed bills. That they're being charged for electricity at the same rate, in the same amount that they were the month before, even though they had no electricity and so on. But you don't see anything about all of the homes that still don't have any electricity or hot water. I mean, there's still thousands of people without electricity and hot water, but you don't see those things. So it's like, it looks like, you know, it makes it look like they're reporting on terrible things, but they're selecting the least terrible things. And with the Occupy movement, people are out there every day. The police are out there. They arrest people several times a week, just randomly. They pick somebody up on the street or two people or something, and nothing has changed, but there's just no coverage of it. But it has changed the debate in the world. I mean, it's like the whole, you know, sort of 99% versus 1% is totally new. I mean, nobody criticized the banks or anything before. So even if it were to cease to exist, it has made its mark. But it hasn't ceased to exist. It's very vibrant, and it's very, look at the storm, Occupy Sandy. They were the people that were out there helping more than anybody else. As a matter of fact, they helped so much they couldn't keep it out of the media completely. But they didn't give it anywhere near as much credit as it deserved.
And why
well,
would...
all right. Good. I would hope that it is. Yeah. So the question is, in the zeitgeist or in the evolution of things existentially and so forth, the questioning of the institutional structures inherited out of history across the boards being addressed by the Occupy movement across the boards, there's something that has to be a qualitative change is still alive and well on this planet.
It's still changing.
Okay. And it has, there's no hint of it having
Occupy
been
has achieved, what it has really achieved is getting people to wake up to part of what's happening. And the Occupy movement, I mean, you know, it's like the Occupy movement has been the inspiration for a lot of things, like the strike against McDonald's. There was one against, I can't remember, one of the soup places. You know, it's like the Occupy movement is doing a lot of things at the grassroots, which is why the Occupy movement was so successful right after, was so able to help people right after the storm, because the Occupy movement already had all of these grassroots connections and so on. They didn't just start out and say, well, let's go out and help people in the storm. They were going out to help people in the communities they were already working with.
But do you think, Nita, that without the media coverage, it has as much power as it had when it was full-blown?
Well, it doesn't, but it's building up. You know, it's sort of like, does a soup have as much power when it's simmering and there's a cover on it as when it's boiling? You know, eventually, we're going to have a soup.
Well, our established political leaders, say Mr. Obama or that, they will talk and they will say they bailed out the banks, they bailed out the whole system that fell apart. You have 12 to 14 million people thrown out of their homes, and then what they say is they bailed them all out. Nobody went to prison for fraud. That's beginning to be floated now in the media, that maybe the top banks and some of the top bankers are going to have to be put on the carpet and so forth, but nobody went to brought that up. And so they're saying, okay, everything's okay, Dow Jones is going now, just get back into your role, get back into your places, accept the idea that the system in place is the one that you must relate to, rather than questioning it qualitatively, a qualitative change that is required in order to address an existentially significant system that has to be changed fundamentally, and that seems to be off the table by our political structure, and say, everybody get back in your place, just do what you've done, and everything's just going to go along unjust as it's always been.
But they have made a qualitative change. The qualitative change is that the profits are growing and people don't have a way to make living anymore. That's a qualitative change. And I mean, I remember years ago when people talked about the economy doing well, it just sort of went without saying that part of the economy was whether people had jobs. And that's no longer the case. They say the economy is doing well simply because some companies are doing well. Yeah. But they're going to run out of doing well because there aren't going to be any more consumers.
So the inherent contradictions are still in place with what is called the bailout and the success of the people that are in positions of power.
They're complaining now that the economy is going to be harmed by the reductions in military spending. Well, why don't we take the money from the reductions in military spending and put it someplace that it needs to be, like, you know. I mean, New York City, for instance, is after the storm and everything, we're cutting down schools. I mean, they're closing down schools, and I'm sitting there thinking, they're saying that that's because the kids are not performing. Well, so what are they going to do with the kids? Meaning, if they're not performing with schools, what are they going to do without schools? You know, and then it's like they want to privatize the electric company, because if they don't privatize it, they'll have to hire another few thousand people. Well, isn't that what governments are supposed to do? Do something for the well-being of the city. I mean, it would be good for the city if they could hire a few thousand people who don't have jobs.
Yeah. So Maggie, well, you and I are close. We've talked a lot. Lord Keynes, who set up the whole system after the Depression and the World War, said in a letter to his grandchildren, he projected ahead, the whole system is his, really. It is supposedly be historically legitimate now. But he said, you and your generation, in 1930 he wrote, he said, that generation in their maturity is going to be confronted with something very hard to understand, massive, technologically induced unemployment. That is, the employment that was so useful after the Second World War in order to distribute demand and buying power, the people were needed in Ford's line, and so people are becoming not needed in the productive process of goods and services, and that's the only way we have to distribute money to people, because the assets are all owned by the assets that are and the capital instruments producing the wealth are all owned by a tiny plutocratic class in every political entity in the planet. So you have a demand problem. People don't have enough money to buy and clear the market of what can be produced. So is that not a major problem that has not been addressed by any of the labor theory of value things that inform the idea the only thing they can think about for the people en masse is get them a job, and the jobs are not going to be there unless it's all phony, created. That's not needed. So is there a major problem confronting mankind in terms of the basic premises of economic theory, and that's what's behind the Occupy movement ultimately?
Well, that's why it's called Occupy Wall Street.
Asking Maggie. What do you think? You're a citizen, world citizen, you've been experienced and so forth.
Two things.
I'm sorry, we're very truncated in our
Two
time.
things occur to me in your questioning. One is Keynesians' grandchildren, they will see displaced employment, technologically displaced employment. But if you look back generationally, they say that it takes 3 generations to create a fortune, to run the fortune, and then the 3rd generation to run it, to lose it. Now, if you look at that not only in terms of people, but also in terms of the evolution of just goods and services, you have a lifeline on goods that are produced. They wear out. They have to be replaced. You find a new technology to replace them. But you have massive construction that is disintegrated. For instance, in this country, you have the structural crippling of all the infrastructure in America. You're talking communication systems, rails, bridges, roadways, port facilities, hardcore industries that are the bread and butter of the building blocks of our nation, of any nation. And so now you have a situation where the wars are rolling back. You're going to have armies of unemployed former vets, injured and non-injured. They're going to come back to a country that's in absolute need of repair, few jobs, few capital, the banks aren't lending, the projects aren't there. Structural unemployment. And you're going to have a very high technological, industry-based economy. But the techno economy is not going to repair and replace the infrastructure that holds our country together.
Do you think we need a qualitative
So you could put the Army Corps, as they say, the Army Corps of Engineers, the veterans, into rebuilding the country, as we did during the 30s. They built Eisenhower built the roads, the highway system in the 50s. Those are all crumbling. 50 and now it's 2013. How many years is that?
But the question is, if I may, do we need something brand new something new, not the reified institution. We have to relate to them, subsume them. Do we need something really new by the terms that the Occupy movement is insisting upon we need across the world? It's not just here. There's something wrong with our inherited institutions systemically. And that's what's being brought up by the Occupy, and there's nothing coming out of our political class that does anything than say, get back in your role, just do what you were doing, everything's okay, we got everything under control. And is that going to hold or not?
Well,
or is there going to be an uprising?
That's the reason that the Occupy movement is operating outside the political system, and they're refusing to be part of the political system. They're just ignoring it.
Right.
Because the Occupy movement is basically saying what's happening is that the Occupy movement is trying to live what is seen as the positive new way of living in the world, which is helping one another, which is what they did with Occupy Sandy, you know, sharing what they have, that sort of thing, and they've deliberately stayed outside of the political system. However, they are going and they're helping people who are losing their houses to mortgages. They're helping people with strikes. They're helping people in that way, but outside the political system. And I'm not one of the people who lived down at Freedom Park, and I don't live with these groups that are living on the street and so on. But I know a bunch of those people, and they are living. They're sharing with each other. They are living what they see as what we need in the new world.
Yeah.
And that's you know, it's like from their point of view, you have to live it in order to, you have to be it in order to put it out there. And this is what nobody sees unless you hang out with them, you know, because the media doesn't cover that. But that's the beauty of the Occupy movement.
Okay, and Margaret is this world citizen, entrepreneurially inclined. What do you think as a citizen, not one deeply involved in the Occupy? Do you think do you sense that there's a need for a qualitative, revolutionary change in the way the planet operates? An operating manual for Spaceship Earth to deal with a new emerging future? Or do you think we're going to be able to just limp along with the same old reified institutions that are outdated systemically, as Mr. Keynes warned? What is your thought? We only have about a couple of minutes left to be able to address this monumental issue. Because the weapon systems that are, if there's political instability, the weapon systems that can be released have now reached species lethality. We're at a moment of qualitative transformation. At the same time, we have an ability with an appropriate organized system that isn't reifying the unjust institutions out of history, have an ability to bring a liberated order to everybody if we have a qualitative change that brings us in touch with the future. Are we at a time of qualitative transformation, or is there, or do you think we may just unleash the weapons in a spasm of hatred or political instability that would stop the evolution of consciousness in the universe at this existentially significant moment in the evolution of events on this planet? You have about 30 seconds.
Number one, we are capable. Number two, I pray and hope that it won't be. One thing that you have to see is that things are getting far more concentrated, whether it's the money companies, the pharmaceutical, the banking industries, or whatever. So what you have is a failure of something called inspectors. The inspectors, like Moody's and Standards & Poor's,
they're in cahoots.
Bad meat, sell it bulk.
Yeah.
Pharmaceuticals, oh, the drug is tainted, sell it cheap, etc., etc. Oh, the 2x4 isn't quite a 2x4, therefore space them a little closer together so we don't have to buy too much more lumber and still have a structure. There's so much falsification in inspections, and it's allowed.
Yeah.
And because the world is so tightly knit and so global, one person's error in America on Wall Street will affect nations all over the world. And you will have domino effects in so many different fields.
We know the way the Occupy feels. We know the way you feel. One of the tyrannies of time is
that it runs out.
Is that we run out of time. We've set the pace for a discussion that is one that's monumentally there. So I'm sorry we run right out of time. We're going to have to add to this
We are.
We can
Say
go a little
say
bit
good night,
more?
Harold.
We'll wrap it out. Okay,
No, keep going.
Keep going?
Yes.
Really? Well,
Yes.
okay, we can keep going along these lines. Pitch in, Occupy. What do you think? Do we need a is it a qualitative thing? Do we have 1,000 years to look into the future to get things
What
right?
I think we
is there
need-
something major going on, like a pregnancy or a birth of a new system or something?
There is, but
that
I
is-
think
the end of history is not such a joke, as Francis Fukuyama talked.
no, that's bullshit.
Okay, well, all right, talk, Occupy.
What I
Let
think,
us know when
but
to
I'm
stop.
not. My own personal opinion, and the opinion of a lot of people in this country, is that we're going to have a revolution.
A revolution.
Yes, a revolution where there will be an armed component. I don't know how much or not, and I'm not one of the people who's going to be out there bearing arms personally, but a lot of people are, and the reason is these people believe in the Constitution, and like what Maggie just said, you know, it's like the Constitution is being destroyed because we're allowing everything to sort of slide. We're allowing the Second Amendment to slide. We're allowing the First Amendment to slide. We're allowing the Third Amendment, the Fourth Amendment. Everything is just sliding. It's sort of like, I mean, Mr. Obama is signing all of these executive orders all the time, and he keeps saying, well, if I can't get this through the Congress, then I'm going to sign an executive order. Well, you know, it's like, that's great if it's something that you want to happen, but once you start doing that, then anything goes. And so I don't see the people at the top even wanting to find a solution to anything. They just want to, I mean, their idea of a solution is to take us back into serfdom, you know, a feudal society. So unless they shape up and ship out, which I don't see any signs of they're doing, there's going to be an armed revolution in this country. And that's why they want to take guns away from people.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with Newton or anything.
Well, that's a very interesting take on it. I wonder if I could suggest that the events, let's say the Enlightenment, you know, John Locke, natural law, personal sovereignty, the Constitution of the United States, the founding fathers of the United States, they said they were making a change. I can't hear. Say.
Keep going.
Okay. They said they were making a fundamental change at that time, but what they were doing was really not a fundamental change in the way I'm trying to think about. What they were doing was just reifying institutions of a particular political group who's going to take control of a situation within an entity, and they weren't making any real big change or anything. It was just a continuum of what had become the divine right of kings, so that the kings could rule, or the emperors of Rome, or anything, where a small group of people have control over a group of people, and the people are more or less
I don't
like
agree.
serfs.
I don't agree with
so
you
that
that
it
they
was
weren't
not a
making
major
changes.
change
But
that
that's
occurred
not
in
true.
1776.
That is not true.
No, well, all you
That
say
is
you're
not
not.
true.
I'm trying to make a point. It was not a major change the way I'm trying to talk about. That's a major change along a continuum. That's quantitative change that began maybe with civilization or something like that. With that, but it was not anything like, there was no liberated order that was possible. It wasn't like now.
You can't have a utopia overnight.
Okay.
In a society.
You can't, is that to say then you can put it off forever?
No,
or
you can't
never
put it
will have
off.
a utopia?
But we are as a species, we go through things with an evolution. You can't just go from being a broken society to being a whole society overnight.
Well, I would,
you know, like even
okay.
with the past solstice, we weren't able to do that.
Well, what past solstice?
The solstice, the winter solstice, which is when you know, the Mayan calendar ended, and a lot of people are saying that we went into the fourth dimension or so on, but that's not possible. You have to go. You know, evolution does move in leaps and bounds.
Well, it moves in punctuated equilibrium when the new appears.
Yes, but it doesn't move in the way that I think you.
Well, I'm suggesting I'm suggesting not a quantitative change. That would be like going from feudalism to whatever the United States set up. But it was still slavery. Women were still oppressed. You didn't have a liberated order as the offing of that time. It was it would be like 7 months of a 9-month pregnancy. But we're now coming to 9 months of a new pregnancy.
The Constitution and the Bill of Rights were major changes. They were, and I have to say it, but the right to freedom, the freedom of speech, and the right to self-defense.
But you're
written into the Constitution were major changes.
I'd like to get your feelings too, maybe because you're John Q. Citizen. There was no way that you were going to be able to have. You have to go to some extreme to try and get at the idea. You're not just talking about a little change like the American Revolution or the Founding Fathers or the Constitution. That was a little change along a compendium of injustice, because the context of realization of technological augmentation, maybe liberation of humanity, wasn't anywhere near at hand. You didn't have any manufacturing. You didn't have any of these things. It was 7 months of a 9-month pregnancy that is now coming due, that you're going to leave the womb. You're not just developing within the womb of history. Maybe Mr. Fukuyama was right. The end of history. Maybe the beginning of a speciation or a punctuated equilibrium, a qualitative, liberating capability for everybody in the ecology that wasn't at all possible in 1776.
Well, that's what all the New Age people say. Well, you sound like a New Ager.
Well, what do you think? You're the world citizen. What do you think? Is this just a major little difference of change, a historical difference, like going from feudalism to capitalism or something? Or is it a time of qualitative change, speciation, or opening upon a new relationship in the universe based upon our having transcended material scarcity?
Okay, for a moment, Harold. The apropos word right here is change. When Nita talks about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, one of the extraordinary things that we as highly educated, reformed individuals who wrote these papers saw as a tragedy of past powers is that they did not, in their laws, write in an ability to change the laws as society progressed in the future. In our Constitution, we have allowed an elasticity. We have allowed change to occur.
Well, we've had a couple of amendments.
By having the ability to make new amendments.
Yeah.
Now that allows our laws to more mirror the cultural and societal and economic changes, i.e., you had slavery repealed. You had women able to vote, women able to buy land and hold land. You had ridiculous ones that expressed change of times, like prohibition, which was a joke. It ended after 11 years.
You got a stupid
but it was also,
now.
But the change also showed that you can fix your problems. That was.
You think we fixed the problems? Why would we have an Occupy movement if we
No.
You mean the problems are just temporary?
No.
They can be just addressed in an act of Congress? Or are they systemic? That's what I'm getting at. Are they systemic? And she's talking about a revolution, not a little evolutionary change where you vote on a tax code or something like that.
But you're saying that the American Revolution was just a little bitty thing, so
right.
why is this a big
No, I'm saying in terms of history.
So maybe this is another little bitty thing.
Yeah, but we repair to it. But that's perfectly good to use that as a tactic to fight them, because that's what they're using to reifying. We're so great, they're setting up a model that's good for the whole world. We're going to impose it on the world with our drones, whatever. You can go and you can attack them, but don't take it seriously that 1776 was a moment of liberation.
Now,
liberation
we need to restore the Constitution because we need to restore the Constitution because, as Maggie said, meaning the Constitution would work. Meaning we have the means to make things work.
Yes.
Well, okay,
that was the beauty of it.
That's a premise worth investigating. Do we? Do we have it?
Yes.
Do you think so? Why do we have the Occupy movement? Why don't we just do it?
Because we have the First Amendment.
We have the First Amendment that's going to be violated. It's being violated. You know, they got that. Did you see that thing where they passed? They can just put anybody in jail with no writ of corpus. Habeas corpus is going. You had Waco. You had all these.
But that's
things.
a violation of the Constitution.
Well, is it about? Oh, so you think the Constitution is valid for all time or something? And
I think it's valid for these times. Yes.
Oh, you think so? Okay. Well, that's a premise.
And because it is elastic and changeable, it can also reflect changing times.
Okay. Well, then that's a more moderate.
As you had with the slavery.
Well, it was slavery in 1776 by the Founding Fathers. They were all slaveholders.
Yes,
so you couldn't call that a liberated order in the way we think of liberated.
No, but because
it was not technologically possible.
Because we had the ability to change. It wasn't written in stone. That we were able to come to our senses.
Well, then why do we want to get back to a constitution that isn't fundamentally altered? You have to alter. If you're in a condition that changes qualitatively, not quantitatively, qualitatively, then you'd have to have a new something, not just reifying outdated
like you're asking
institutions.
for it sounds to me like you're asking for a new dictatorship or something,
Well,
a utopian dictatorship or something.
Well,
that's what it sounds to me like you want.
No, what you're talking about is like evolution.
But what are you talking about?
I don't know. But what I'm saying is, I don't think the Constitution of the United States is adequate, or could it have been adequate, to what would be called real liberation of everybody.
What is
it wasn't possible.
What is
because
real liberation in your term?
Well, it would be that everybody could realize their full potential, and you have such built-in injustice in the system that's there, and they're reifying institutions
not
that
built-in injustices.
Continue the injustice. You can see the concentration of all the means of production. Mr. Keynes, when he said you're not going to need workers, that's the only way they have to distribute income to people legitimately. The politicians, we got to get jobs for people. When the jobs are going to be structurally done away with, you're going to have some way of having a way in which people get income or buying power by something other than being a wage slave or like a serf. They had it in the feudal time. They got wage slaves. You got a few people own everything. They're like the kings, and it's still in place.
But that's not the political system. That's the economic system.
Yes, well, the economics informs that it's all connected at the hip. And what you're talking about, and you get to a time of existential challenge to the evolution. And it is meaningful. It should be brought up. It should be on the table. Is it true?
It's always been existential.
No, it hasn't been.
To evolution.
Because you were limited in 1770. You could kill the Iroquois, you could kill the Indians, the beasts, the French, everything. But the human species, the evolution of consciousness continued. That's changed. Even in 1962, at the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, they're going to destroy civilization. But there would be a few scraggling human beings left. No longer.
All right,
We've crossed the line, existentially significant and evolutionary, not historical terms, evolutionary terms, when we can stop conscious evolution in the universe with weapons that exist and are on trigger alert. That's new. That's not old. That's not like one tribe displacing another.
What's wrong with doing that, Harold?
Start over.
Well, I don't
fresh.
know. What's wrong with doing that is to
I mean, it's an option.
Throw the baby out with the bathwater.
It is an option to do away, and probably.
I mean, you seem to be promoting it, so.
No, I'm not promoting that at all. I'm just saying that's on the left side of the vector is that. On the other side,
well, it's not inevitable.
It's not inevitable, but it's not something that was anything achievable in 1776.
But
that
was
just another,
I don't understand what you're getting at.
In 1088 or something.
But
Harold, all of history, we're coming to the end of history. May not be so absurd that we're coming to a time of existential alteration in universe on an evolutionary context, because the averse side of the destruction, which is there, it can be modeled, we can know it, is in our lifetime.
It's highly unlikely that we're going to destroy everything.
Not everything. Homo sapiens.
That's what I mean. It's highly unlikely that we're going to destroy Homo sapiens.
No,
who needs us anyway?
Exactly, but if
that's good. That should be put on the table. Is that true or not? That's a scientific.
Well, but if it did happen, it happens.
No, you can't be so cavalier. That's something. Is it ever brought up in the news? Is it ever brought up in science?
Will be the new future energy source.
There are modelings.
Soylent Green. Soylent Green.
There are modelings that show that, not in science fiction, but there are modelings that show that is the case only since about 1970.
I know, but I don't understand what the point of that is. It's highly unlikely that we're going to destroy all of human species.
No.
I mean, I think it's likely that we'll destroy a lot of it, but not all of it.
Okay, well then you question that premise. That's
no,
fair
the
enough.
fact that it's possible doesn't mean that it will happen.
No. There's a difference between that. No, oh, you're right. No, there's a difference. There's a big difference between capability. Where there was no way in 1776, no matter what stupidity we would do, or political whatever, that we could wipe out the Homo sapiens
Okay,
species.
but like, if you had an automobile, you could go out and probably mow down 1,000 people in a day, but that doesn't mean that it's going to happen. The fact that you have the ability to do that doesn't mean you're going to do it.
Well, no, but it's capability.
That's what I'm saying.
No, but no,
that's
look
capability.
At that. So you say that. If
people with automobiles have the capability of killing a lot of people.
There's no way with just automobiles that unless everybody's going to stand up and be going and crash into each other all at once, it's not going to happen.
Harold, you're an absolutist. You're a utopian absolutist.
I'm not a utopian absolutist. I don't think it's not at all.
You sound like a totalitarian.
Why is that reality that is shown in modeling? It's shown in modeling.
But I don't understand. There are a lot of things that are possible in modeling. It doesn't mean they're going to happen.
No, of course not. Of course not. It's a very synergetic universe. Anything could happen. We're at a time of what I'm trying to get at is this is not just another phase of history. This moment. Now, it's absurd to think you were born into that after 10,000 generations of human evolution. But that may, in fact, be the case. And on the other side of the destruction, which is existentially new, and the modeling shows that we can do it now. We've got the ability.
You just want it to happen on your watch, Harold.
How is that useful to finding a solution?
Well, because on the other side, you see on the other side that we
How are you contributing to finding a solution by
well, it's not me, but there are some other people, systems thinkers, intellectuals, and so forth of thought, some of which are really worth paying attention to. We've got Voltaire and all the things of the history and all that, and the news and the thing we do. But then you had systems thinkers like Fuller. And you had some others who were thinking whole systems, and they measured...
Well, Fuller, with all due respect, Fuller would not be talking the way you are.
I think he would.
No, he would not.
No,
well, I did a program with him that I aired from 1974 just a couple days ago on MNN, and in that, the major premise was that at the level of capability, we were, as a species, transcending material scarcity. Okay? The world has all been evolved, history and all of the rest of it was in a condition of understanding there wasn't nearly enough between the resources and what existed and what we were born into, including our ability to technologically manipulate it to the advantage of the human society, all of the human society and all of the ecology, that we were transcending scarcity as an ontologic reality.
Yes, but that's not the same thing as what you're saying.
That's the reverse side of the destruction. They're two sides of the same coin.
He would not be sitting here, but
he
Mr.
did.
Fuller
That's what he said.
would not be sitting here pushing the fact that we're going to destroy the human species.
I didn't push the fact that we said, no, I'm pushing it I'm suggesting that we have a two-edged sword. In terms of the at this moment, at no moment in history is there any comparison to now. No moment in history. No moment in history is there anything to compare to now.
That doesn't change anything, Harold.
Well, you don't listen. If you don't think
I can't hear what you're saying.
You can't see. Two-edged sword. On one hand, we can stop the evolution.
Harold, but I don't
on the other, we have the means of realizing the liberation of humanity and the ecology.
But I don't.
The two come together, and they both are modeled, and they both come up with about the year 1970.
What's the big deal? I think it's just as terrible. It would be just as terrible to nuke.
To be what? To have a liberated order where everybody's able to realize.
If you just, I mean, it would be almost worse to nuke one country than to get rid of the human species.
What happened to your thinking? You're not thinking? What are you saying? Collectively, we have the ability to liberate the human society in a way that's never been. Everybody would be able to realize their full potential. We have a capability. Moore's law going multimedia. I mean, we have transcended material scarcity as a reality.
So what?
We write our operating manual. That's never been the truth condition between technological capability and historically. It's new. And the other side of that two-edged sword, we can stop evolution. We could never have the power to do that historically of 200,000 years of our existence.
200,000 years is nothing in evolution. So we wouldn't be stopping anything because 200,000 years in evolution is not very long.
It's a piffle.
You seem not to want to think. I'm sorry, I don't know why you don't want
Harold,
to think.
Number one,
you want to just keep reassigning stupid thoughts.
Number one, even if we have enough, it's not good enough. Why? Because anybody who has the ability to distribute will control the world.
No, it
One.
would include the...
No, that's
the
not the
biggest-
game plan here.
No,
of
now you're going
humankind.
into absolutely, but the
And
basis
two,
of the
mankind is-
conspiracy against the establishment. That's a part of the Occupy myopia. Yeah.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, you don't seem to want to, and that's okay. You
Well, I
have
don't.
to.
I don't
And
think,
two, as
I think
far
you're
as
talking
is-
gibberish.
Okay, well then maybe
Yeah.
that's
In terms
true.
of destruction, Harold, there's nothing greater a destroying force than nature itself. It has destroyed over millions and millions
I
of years.
disagree with you. I don't think there's anything in nature that can destroy, only one thing that exists on this planet that can destroy the Homo sapiens species, which is the leading edge of consciousness in an evolutionary process for 13.7 billion years of this universe. Only one thing. It's the weapon systems built by the Homo sapiens species itself. That's the only thing that could do it. No volcano, no asteroid, they could be dealt with. The only thing that can't be is the unleashing of the ungodly destructive capability of our extended
Well, what I don't
consciousness.
understand is why do you think that we're separate from nature? Meaning, we're part of nature, and so everything that we build is part of nature in the same way that an anthill is part of nature, and it's something that the ants artificially build.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
true.
there's no difference.
That's true.
Termites,
Worms.
build their,
Yeah,
you
there's
know, their homes.
results, yeah.
So the weapon systems are
Oxygen.
part of nature too.
Well,
no,
yeah,
no,
we're
no, no,
all
but
part-
no, no,
we're all
no.
part
But
of it.
on these weapons, we're going to put lethal weapons. Only Homo sapiens need apply to die. All other living creatures.
No,
are,
it's only that we do not have the ability to stop life. We can destroy Homo sapien, a good deal of what we would call the higher order, the primates and that. They have modeling of what it would mean. It would be the end of our species. We are, as far as I'm concerned, the leading edge of an anti-entropic function in the universe of giving increased conscious pattern of understanding to our place in the universe that gives some meaning to the whole evolutionary process. We're at a point where we can stop it.
Well,
with
no,
weapons.
I-
Only with weapons.
I don't believe that we're the only living beings in the universe.
I didn't
for
say
one.
the only, I said the leading edge.
I don't think we're the leading edge.
You don't think
There-
we
there
are? What other,
There are
how do
many,
you
there are
define?
many planets, many star systems, and so on that are far older than this one. So
No, star system. I'm talking about a biological evolutionary process that we know.
well, we don't know what's
This
out
is
there,
an
but
we
that
don't
doesn't
know
mean
of
there
any
isn't-
others. You got
there-
Sete,
it doesn't
we're
mean
trying
that
to
it
reach
doesn't
out.
mean that they're not out there.
Well, we haven't encountered them.
Well, we
Sete,
don't know
they're
a lot of
looking.
things about Earth.
It's just
even.
like Copernicus. They used to say the sun revolves around the earth. That was
Yeah.
written in stone. And then they had to decide that all these planets revolve around the sun.
Yeah, and we now know.
Oh, it used to be that the world was flat. If you sailed too far this way, you'd fall off.
Yeah,
Then
ignorant.
they found it
It's
wasn't.
been ignorant. We've
So,
been ignorant.
are we so egotistical as to assume that there's nothing out there that's not living also?
Well, probabilities that there probably is, but we haven't discovered it yet.
Maybe they've discovered
We
us
haven't discovered
and
it
decided
yet.
that we're not
Yeah,
worth
It may be that if we get to a point, if we get the point being, on one hand, you're trying to make a point that this is not normal time. Now, people have always said that. Cro-Magnon Cave said the mastodons are big, this is really great, or something like that. But this is a particularly unique moment in evolutionary terms, because the technological capability that built weapon systems but can stop conscious evolution, at least with the human being at the apex of that process of bringing increased pattern of understanding to the process of which we're a part, is that we have also a possibility of liberating the entire Homo sapiens species to where everybody realizes their full potential, from one where only a few people have ever been able to do that. Everybody's been wallowing around in the mud of serfdom and slavery to the few people who were able to get power within a system where the assumption was scarcity. For me to win, you had to lose. That's been the reality of setting up the political system, realpolitik, everything we've set up. So we have the ability to get all of humanity liberated within an ecological order with good design, and be able to get like Gaia and to get a principle where you have liberation of the whole society, like every cell in the human organism, 100 trillion cells, and they're all matter and they all relate to one another. So you could do that, and then you would have a residency that will inter-accommodate you.
We've always had the ability to do that.
You think we
Yes,
have?
But that theory,
No, let her say. What does
no,
that
but
mean?
that theory, Harold, runs counter to evolution
No, why? Why does that run counter to evolution? The
because
universe is synergetic. In reality, it's synergetic. The behavioral system is unpredicted by the sum of the time of the parts of it, maximally engaged, and that's the process of evolution itself. And we may be coming to the end of the Homo sapien experience. We're going to come into a new relationship in universe of a liberated order that has never been. We have that in our hands as well. If we get appropriate
who's going to lead this new order?
Well, it would be led by the people who are part of the Occupy, who have a system.
But they're Homo sapiens.
But that's making a qualitative change and subsuming the outdated institutions we've inherited. So it's not a little change, or it's not guns, or it's not this or something. It's a major change in terms of understanding.
They got lying inspectors.
We have equally liberating capability that is inherent in the technological system that's going exponential now, exponential. And it's got a killing reside, it's got a living reside. We're going to have something to include everybody in a new pattern of understanding, like coming to something new, punctuated equilibrium. So this is not your normal time, and you can't repair to the Constitution, except as something to be subsumed. And all the
can repair to your iPhone, which has you under their control.
Okay, I didn't mean to go, but the Occupy movement is to be celebrated as a tactic to bring some attention to the fact that the world is screwed up. It's fundamentally unjust, and the tendencies of the moment are against that. Thank God they got some things like Dawn Deshawn and people like that who are doing MNN and doing Manhattan, a place where there can be something alternative to the establishment, saying, get back in your places, everybody. Get back in your slave role. Go become a serf. Do that. We got everything under control, and the Constitution and all that. You see, there's got to be something alternative.
Think that very soon, because there do need to be changes, a lot of people are going to be saying, as did Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And that's what's going to bring about the change.
Okay.
But we don't know.
Violence.
It's going to happen through violence, yes.
Okay, if you want to say that.
But I don't know, I don't think we're going to end up with a utopia afterwards either.
Okay, talk the way you see
I don't think we're going to have a utopia in any way. We're going to evolve, and hopefully we'll have something better than we had before, like when we had the American Revolution. But we're not going to have a lasting utopia ever.
Well, do you think we're going to stay Homo sapien forever? Do you think there's not going to be...
We might not.
Evolution doesn't work that way. You have an evolutionary pattern. 99.999% of all the species that ever existed have gone extinct.
Well, William Tiller is a physicist that I think has hit it right on the nail.
Okay, talk.
And basically, he was the head of
Tiller, T-I-L-L?
Tiller, T-I-L-L-E-R. He was the head of the Stanford material physics department for many years. He built weapon systems in this country. Yeah. But what he's doing now...
Oh, Teller.
Tiller, T-I-L-L-E-R.
Not Teller.
Not Teller. No, no. That has to do with bomb. No, this is different. But Tiller now is doing experiments that have to do with consciousness. And basically what he believes is that we are evolving, and that there are, say, 12, 15 dimensions. We don't know exactly how many, but I think we're up to 12 or 13 right now.
You're talking string theory now. There's 12.
We're talking physics. We're not talking string theory.
But string theory.
No, we're not talking string theory.
Well, there's 10 dimensions in string theory.
No, but this is more. They have more now.
Okay,
so
go ahead.
So basically, what he says is, the bottom 4 dimensions are the ones that we're living in right now, where we have, the material body, the sort of thing, and so on. And that we're going to ascend, and in the future, we're going to ascend to higher dimensions, and we will be only peripherally aware of these lower 4 dimensions.
Well,
that's what he says.
Sense,
okay, so he's basically saying, I think, that the 4th and 5th, I think it's the 5th dimension is the dimension of love.
Okay.
And so we're going to start experiencing that dimension more, or at least some of Homo sapiens will. And then we will begin to experience the material dimension less and less.
Okay.
Now,
okay, that's interesting.
So that's interesting because that's an evolutionary thing. Now, when that happens, the people who are engaged in that will get rid of the weapons, obviously. But there are other people who think that some people will evolve, but the bulk of human species will stay as it is, and it'll be sort of the difference between between them and us will be like the difference between us and monkeys and
Planet
chimps.
of the Apes, like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that there'll be, you know, these different levels. You know, it's like we'll be the human species that were left behind, and then there'll be these beings that will be more evolved within the next couple of hundred years.
Well, yeah, they got some things. Or Carl Sagan had Civilization 1, that's about 100 years out, and so forth.
So I think that that's very probable.
Well, those kind of things are being projected. Carl Sagan's still got SETI things going and all that, and they're doing it. And now we're coming down, and we had the physics. We had physics, we had Einstein, we had Ernst Mach, we had Einstein, and then we had quantum mechanics.
Amit Goswami is a physicist too. Amit Goswami. He's an Indian physicist who came to this country, and he was a professor here.
Yeah.
And he was a traditional material physicist, but now he's talking about consciousness and life after death and so on, using the physics models, and also using this evolutionary model.
Well, those are
in
things
physics.
that should be up on the table. Yeah.
Of course, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to be that, you know, that in 10 years from now there will be a utopian society.
I'm worried. I'm more worried, like with Netanyahu or something. That
well, exactly.
He's going to lob a couple of atomic bombs.
He's not going to be one of the people that.
Yeah, or something, and then it's going to, because it would have nothing to do with anything. I'm more worried about them stumbling into an unleashing of the ungodly destruction by some sort of.
Well, I think there will be a nuclear war, but I don't think it will eliminate all of the human species.
Okay, well, you argue with that.
I think it's going to happen in the Middle East. I think Israel will use nuclear weapons.
That's very worrisome, all of that, you know.
Yeah.
But the fact, so we're arguing all of this, and then it goes to the physics, and then we get quantum mechanics, so we have the two things, part of physics, and we get the two, and then they come up with string theory. They come up with that, and that Fuller, God bless him, he said he cast about for the second law of thermodynamics. All systems move toward entropy or chaos, the limits of the system within a closed system. We assumed it was a closed system. Now they've got the Big Bang, 13.7 billion years ago. There was nothing, there was less than an atom, and then everything is created. There could be like 10 dimension parallel universes, like soap bubbles in a tank, and that this is a connection to another, so we don't even know if it's a closed or open system on a universal scale. So we're coming to that point. This is a point of qualitative transformation after 200,000 years, I still do believe. And it could be up the ladder, and it won't be all at once and everything like that, but we got to get some sort of thinking outside of just thinking that we have it in place that we can impose. I'm afraid they're just going to try and impose this outdated thing from Constitution of the United States upon the whole world with their drones and whatnot, and it's going to lead to a conflagration that would do it, and they're not going to get the new economics that is going to.
But they're not imposing the Constitution. The Constitution is what people are fighting for.
No, but it's our system.
The people at the top are getting rid of the Constitution.
Well, no, they're not. They're assuming historically that the model that really works is the one that.
No, executive orders and so on are against they're unconstitutional.
Well,
we're not following. The people at the top are not following the Constitution.
We had 1,000 years of Rome. We had 1,000 years of hereditary feudalism in Europe and around the world. Always, it's been a few people have control, and everybody's the serf.
But what's happened here is that the Constitution has broken down. The Constitution here is broken down.
You think the system is self-correcting? Maybe it is. She's saying maybe it's correcting, and we'll be able to correct it. But as long as they're still only saying we got to have all these wage slaves, we haven't got any way of forming capital.
Well, there's a perfect example.
We don't have a new alternate economic system that makes. They're going to be doing the debt ceiling all over again, all that bullshit. They're stumbling all over themselves. They don't know what they're doing, trying to reify an outdated thing rather than think about. There's no new thinking.
Built into the Constitution is the Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights, and that is the guarantee of the right to change the government by force if the government exceeds its power.
That made sense.
And that's constitutional. That's our constitutional right.
With all due respect, that made a lot of sense when you had a musket. Everybody had a musket. They had a musket, so you could get some people out there and they could come and fight. But
not
now
just
what
a
you'd
musket.
have to do in order to be really actually able to address the tyranny of the United States, you'd have to have atomic weapons.
Yes,
you have to have real weapons, not a gun. Not a little gun. That's not going to do it.
Harold, there are a lot of people inside the government, inside of the military forces that think this way. There are people inside the atomic weapons programs who think this way.
Think what way?
That the government is exceeding its constitutional powers, and that we've been destroying the Constitution, and that it needs to be restored.
I don't think they've been exceeding the constitutional.
Oh!
No, I agree with you absolutely. As a tactic, it's perfectly right to dig out the Constitution. I swear allegiance to the Constitution and to the belief that blacks should be
Harold,
slaves.
When there is a revolution in any country, the major goal is to take hold of the weapons of the oppressor.
That's true.
That's what's going to happen here if we come to that.
Okay. Go ahead.
Meaning the revolutionaries will take over the military system. They'll take over the weapons. They'll take the weapons away from the government and so on.
And they'll do that by seizing weapons catches and everything like that, or seizing or getting people within the government that would go
and a lot of
with
these
the
people are
Robin Hood
ex-military people too, so they know where all of this is.
Okay, I've been ranting. You've been a little.
And they know how to use
making
it.
some sense. What about you, citizen world citizen and entrepreneur? There's about 4 minutes left. What do you think of, are we living in a time of qualitative transformation, or will things come around okay, or do you think there's a major change needed, or what do you think? And what about public access? Since this is your first attempt at public access, and welcome to public access.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. No, just in retrospect, there was a government that came upon in the 20th century by revolution, and it didn't even last 100 years. It was called communism. It came in and it fanned out. It had no recourse for change. It was their way or no other way.
Yeah, the dialectical.
And so it died from within.
Okay.
It had no voice with which to combat it. Its shortcomings, its deleterious laws, whatever. I go back to the Constitution. It can be maligned. It's maligned by individuals. And individuals can form groups. But it is a strong, elastic, very truthful document with much ideology and an ability to see the foibles of mankind against itself.
And an ability to change.
And an
with
ability
the times,
to
is
change.
That what you're saying?
That's correct.
Adequately?
That's correct.
You think the same?
Yes, we even have the ability in our Constitution. We have a check against the government. We have the constitutional right to use force against an oppressive government. Even that, no government has ever had that before.
That's correct.
So there may be hope in the way things are, and just they'll work themselves out and everything.
We have the power of impeachment of an elected official.
Yeah, you notice they can kill millions of people in an unjust war, but the only time they get impeached is if they have an affair with some little chippy.
Well, that's not quite true.
Almost.
Only in one case.
Oh, well, yeah, but there haven't been that many cases.
There's only been 2 acts of impeachment.
Yeah, but it's very okay, and okay. Does that assume then that our system is appropriate? Or
No.
where does it make change for qualitative change? We've only got a couple minutes. Qualitative.
It's the best we have.
It's the best we
and
have.
It's the best there is.
Enough.
And
the
the
best we have is not good enough for what the future requires. We don't have the way to the future systemically. That's what I'm saying. You seem to think we can just drift along and everything will work out, or the answers will come.
No, you do
somehow
not drift. You fight.
You have to
You fight.
You
With
have to
all,
reify
with
the
all,
outdated Constitution.
with all the weapons the Constitution allowed us to have, which are very broad, be it governmental, judicial, and even the rights of man himself.
What about communication, even including public access cable television? Do you think
First
we ought to
Amendment,
wipe that
all
out?
the way.
Should we work it out, or should we encourage public access?
Total public access Hyde Park corner.
You heard it first here. I think we've come to the end of the program. Margaret Borges, and the hidden Guy Fawkes, and me ranting and so forth. Welcome to Public Access, my good friend Maggie Borges. Thanks for Dijon for helping me make it possible. And for Public Access.
Let's go get a taco.
Welcome to the United States.